Hey, it's Sarah Burke here from the Women in Media podcast. And before we get started on a new episode, could I get you to hit like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell, whichever app you do your podcast listening in. Make sure you're all set up so you know when there's a new episode and you can help spread the word. Oh, and if you're so inclined, could I ask you to leave a review if the app that you're using does that? You're the best. All right, let's get to the show. I'm Sarah Burke, and this is the Women in Media podcast. My guest today is a clinical sexologist, a psychotherapist, a political scientist, a social worker, and a doctor of human sexuality. She specializes in all things sex, love, relationships, body image, women's health, and the intersection of mental wellness. And she's just launched a show of her own.
The day that document was leaked from the Supreme Court regarding Roe v. Wade in the U.S., all of the women patients that I saw that day, that week, this became a conversation. Because it not only triggered me, it triggered all women.
My guest today is Carlen Costa.
Wow, that's a heck of an intro.
Hey, that's your resume, not mine.
Welcome.
So I feel like I have seen you all over several media publications over the last, let's say, 5-6 years. Everything from HuffPost to, some TV networks and
CBC, fun.
I would almost say that you're like a psychologist influencer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hope so. That's the point. Yeah, I definitely, mental wellness, psychotherapist, influencer of that kind. How to love yourself better, how to get in your, the right mindset, how to build boundaries and relationships that are meaningful and powerful with other people. Yeah, thank you.
I needed to enlist the help of someone to have this discussion about abortion rights and the potential overturn of Roe v. Wade and how that conversation looks up here in Canada. Now, Carlen, while I am excited to hear about your new show, we are going to have a discussion here about abortion rights, okay? You knew you were a feminist at 12 years old. How the hell do you know that at 12 years old?
Because I was already at 12 years old. I was already sick of men's shit. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's you know what it is. I grew up. I had a lot of strong women in my family, right? Portuguese Catholic. That's how I grew up. But my dad had all sisters. My mom had all sisters. So I was surrounded by powerful women my whole life. But then, we would do things like go to church, and that's led by men. And then I would be like, this doesn't resonate with who I'm becoming, right? From a young age, I was just like, there's a lot of hypocrisy. And I could tell that already at a young age, to be like, you have to look like this, but then you have to be like this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to show up in this way. And I was like, I'm tired already. I just walked out of the womb and I'm tired, And then, but just from a young age, I just had this drive, I think sometimes we have to build the motivation in our lives. And I think sometimes some of us are born with motivation in our lives. And from grade 4, I was minister of the environment on student council. And literally I was on student council from grade 4 up until my last year of university, trying to create and motivate change in my community. That's just me. I got a lot of energy, Sarah.
So you've told me a story about you at 12 years old in church and your first time sort of sticking it to the man. Tell me about that.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually lived close to our church, pretty much right across the street. And so we had a relationship with our priests really often. And our priest would come over on Sunday and have lunch with us. And then I love to read. I have a whole wall of library of books. I love to read. And young Portuguese Catholic girl, I was like, let's read this Bible. Let's read this book that everybody's telling me about that is important, that every Sunday I have to wake up and put a dress on and go and listen to. Right. So then I would sit there with these priests, and I had really awesome priests, to be honest with you. The men that led our church were always really, really great. And they would sit there and they would entertain me for hours because I would be like, but what about this? but what about this? But what about this? And that led me to really create discernment about what I was being taught versus what I actually believe, which was pretty neat. Especially because I had the support of many women around me to be like, you know, don't take anything at face value, right? Ask questions, create discernment, create criticism. So at the age of 12, I reckoned the school, this is actually what happened, is that the school in my elementary school was asking all of these boys to be altar servers. There was like, I don't know, boys didn't want to be altar servers for some reason. Not in our church, but like, you know what I mean? There was a lot going on that we didn't talk about in the 90s, you know? And I remember, you know, I'm already a go-getter at this point. I'm already like president of student council. I'm doing all the things. And I remember saying to my teachers, well, why are you only asking the boys? I got to go to church every Sunday, so why are you only asking the boys? They're like, oh, well, that's just how it is. And I was like, so are you telling me that my only option is to go to church, to listen to these men, and then just do liturgical expression, which was like the dance, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you grew up, but like in the Catholic Church, you know, they would often dress up these young girls in these like white dresses and like teach us these like dances or whatever. So we would go to church and like do these like religious, it was really weird, but religious dances for the church performance. And then the boys would get to carry all like the cool gold stuff and like walk with the priest. And I was like, this can't be my only options. I refuse to accept that. So I created a petition. I garnered many signatures, hundreds of signatures from kids and teachers and people in my community. And we served it to the diocese. And I was just like, no, listen, girls are allowed to be altar servers too. If I have to show up for this, then I also have to have a meaningful role in this. So I don't know what the bishop was thinking, but he was impressed by me or something, or there really was just that little, like that lack of men, that scarcity of boys who wanted to be part of the church. So because of my petition, because of the ruckus that I created, that's when the shift actually started happening in Canada and across Ontario. So because of my little 12-year-old self being like, this isn't okay. But the kicker is this. So the diocese accepted that we could have girls as altar servers, and then that just started the chain reaction across Canada, which was pretty cool. I didn't recognize it at the time. I had to like go back and like start learning about it. But the cool thing is that then they came to me and the priest was like, okay, great. So like, we'll see you on Sunday, like for altar server training. And I was like, oh, no. No. And they were like, what? And I was like, no. I don't actually want to be an altar server. I just thought it was ridiculous that you would exclude people that look like me from being and worshiping the faith that they choose. You know, essentially you're kind of forcing us to be part of it at this point, but that we choose to be a part of. And they were just like, are you serious? Like, you just did all this work? And I was like, yeah, because damn the man, save the empire, you know? Like, that's me.
So all of that, and the kicker is, you were like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Like, when I look back on the story, I'm like, I was a hell of a kid. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, who does that? No, I was like, plainly, I still actually remember their faces when I was like, oh, no. You can ask those girls. They like want to do that. I don't. No, thank you.
But I did it for them. So great.
I did this for them. Yeah. This isn't about me. This is about us.
Cool. So how did, you know, this fire at a young age lead you to your work in both, you know, psychotherapy, but also social work, political science?
Yeah. So, you know, this fire grew in me as I got older, essentially. It's like passion to, you know, create change. So I actually was pre-law. Like, I was going to be a lawyer. So I went to university. I went to the University of Western Ontario, political science. And I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, this is how I'm going to create change in this world. And as I kind of started getting into it and political theory and all of that, I was just like, I don't think this is my life. Like, I was like, wait, hold on a second. I think that this is something that other people wanted me to do. This isn't something, again, that I am choosing. So I just remember I like woke up in like the middle of the night and was like cold sweat. And I was like, oh, this is not my life. Like, I don't know what that was, but it was crazy. And from that moment on, I was like preparing for the LSATs. Like I was like doing it. And then I was like, no, I can't do this. So I quickly like kind of shifted. I signed up to get a minor in sociology, another minor in gender studies, and then completed my political science degree, and then went on to do social work. And then social work is what led me to become a psychotherapist, because that's how you did it at the time, 10 years ago when I was doing this work, social work. And then I got my master's in public health and then my doctorate in human sexuality to specialize in sexual health and sexual science, because if I wanted to help people, I wanted to kind of have a little bit of fun, and I wanted it to be interesting for the rest of my life. Like my brain just goes and goes and goes and goes. So I was like, what is going to be super interesting for me to talk about? And I just remember watching Sex with Sue on TV on Sunday nights. I remember watching Tracy Cox from the UK. We had satellite, so we would get those European channels,
Nice.
And I remember watching those women, and I grew up in like a pretty sexually liberal house, like a lot of women. So like you see women's bodies, you see bodies, the dinner table with my whole family, people would joke about sex. And like, it was always, even though we weren't allowed to talk about it, it was kind of always around. So then when I discovered within myself that I wanted to be a psychotherapist, this is how I wanted to help people, I was like, I can't work with kids because like I'm too much of like my fire would be like way too intense. Like I can't, right? Because like you can't, if you hurt kids, like I'm going to punch you in the face. Like I have zero tolerance for it. But I was like, but adults can make their own decisions, right? Adults can be accountable. Yeah. Adults can learn critical thinking skills and discernment and like are capable of being responsible for themselves. I was like, let's work with adults and see if we can start to influence future generations to love themselves. Right. Anyways.
So interesting because like, as you're talking about like how liberal things were in your house, like my family, was, I would say, a standard like Ontario family, like growing up. Yeah. If I asked questions, there would be a discussion, but like I will never forget how uncomfortable it was when my parents put on American Pie. Oh, we rented a movie for tonight. And I'm sitting there so uncomfortable, like just, going through sex ed at school and then coming home to this, So it's interesting to me that like those conversations were, at the forefront in your house. And, for me, it was we were like tiptoeing around it, I'd say.
Yeah. And many of the conversations weren't necessarily healthy conversations, right? Okay. Like, let's be clear about that. Like there was a lot of like sexualization of women and like talking, about sex and power and control with men and women and that kind of thing. And how women needed to like dress up and show up to like be seen as men, right? So it wasn't necessarily always healthy, but it was definitely there. And, I also learned that I really like sex. So I was like, how can I make money from this that doesn't involve me actually like selling my body? You know what I mean?
No,
like,
fair enough. Because
that's my boundary, No judgment, just my boundary.
I want to put a trigger warning out there because we are going to be talking about abortion. Why don't we start with that? In your work, how do you deal with trigger warnings on this kind of stuff with your patients?
Gently. And by holding a lot of space. The day that document was leaked from the Supreme Court regarding Roe v. Wade in the U.S., all of the women patients that I saw that day, that week, this became a conversation. Because it not only triggered me, it triggered all women.
Whether they were dealing with abortion or not. Yeah.
Whether they had dealing with it, had one, had supported a friend that had one, had a daughter that had one, had one and then was feeling regret about it. Like all of my conversations that week became about how do I support my clients in this space now of feeling unsafe in their communities in a whole new way that hasn't been challenged in a long time.
And we're talking about laws from, it was 1973, right?
Yeah. to be fair, in the United States, it's kind of been consistently challenged, right? So for some reason, the Republicans have this thing about abortion, especially in the Deep South, right? They've actually always been challenging it. But in Canada, for example, so in the United States, it's Roe v. Wade, 1973. In Canada, it is R.V. Morgentaler, 1988. So in Canada, not since the Mulroney era has abortion been challenged at all. And to be fair, you know, even though there's a lot of conservatives that I would like to challenge on their position, but the conservative government has actually come out and said we have no plans in challenging this. Like, the jurisprudence of Canada supports this supports this standing and this position on abortion here, and as a healthcare right. And right, but as a healthcare freedom in this country. But the United States, they've been at this fight since Roe v. Wade, to be honest with you. And it has not become safer for women in many ways.
And we do have to touch on the fact that the word right, if we look at that and where things stand actually with the charter, you brought up a really good point when we were talking earlier about that.
Yeah.
Trudeau may say that this is the position of government right now, but we're not actually covered properly.
No. And I love that you said that, right? Trudeau did come out and say all women in Canada has a right to safe and legal abortion. And then that was challenged immediately on Twitter. Because in Twitter, the Twitterverse, the brilliant Twitterverse was like, actually, it's not a right here. And the reason for that is because no Supreme Court in Canada has ever said in a majority decision that a woman has the constitutional right to an abortion. University of Ottawa, Daphne Gilbert, actually, law school said that. She said it's not a right here. And neither country, neither in the United States or in Canada, has a case enshrining the right to abortion been passed. Been upheld by the Supreme Court. Canada, however, has evolved, fortunately, to not want to challenge it, right? Whereas the United States, not so much. But in Canada, right, Canada, Section 7 of the Charter guarantees the right to life, liberty, and the security of the person, right? So that's neat for Section 7, but the way that actually supports us here is that it does not force a woman by threat of criminal sanction, right, to carry a fetus to term unless she meets certain criteria unrelated to her own priorities and aspirations. And that is what happened before then, right? Women used to have to sit in front of a panel of doctors, male doctors, and justify their abortion and have someone give them permission.
It's a hard enough thing on its own, standalone.
Yeah.
Without having to justify it to a single person.
Exactly. But let's be clear. Canada has no laws governing abortion. No laws. We have the precedents of R.V. Morgentaler, which struck down a specific part of the procedure of abortion. And that's how Morgentaler won that case. But it had absolutely nothing to do with my right to life, liberty, and my body. Canada has no laws governing abortion. However, thus far, our government has said that there is no, right? We don't want to reopen this debate. In Canada, I feel pretty confident. In Canada, I do. And the reason why I feel confident about it in Canada is because we have the right to termination of life here in Canada, right? So we have the right to end our lives when we choose to, medically assisted in that way. That law really complements, if that's the right word, the precedents of the abortion debate. So even if someone were to challenge it, they would have to undo, like, it wouldn't just be abortion that we'd be undoing. It would be so many other things. And that's why in Canada, I feel safe about it. You know, conservative out of Alberta, some young nut out of Alberta or whatever, can say whatever he wants to say. I can't even remember his name right now, but like, sure. But I think, but like legally, right? Legally, I feel safe in Canada to be able to still access, fortunately. And thankfully also our government has said to Americans, if Roe v. Wade is overturned and you cannot access safe abortion in any state in the United States, which you would still be able to even if R v. Wade is overturned, we would open our doors to Americans seeking safe abortion, which is like, yay, Canada. Like another reason why I live here, you know?
Yes, for sure. I was listening to The Daily. It's a New York Times podcast, and they've been interviewing women who work at abortion clinics. Some of the stories that have been shared. Women are facing becoming a criminal, right? If they continue, if this is overturned, if they were continuing their service. One woman was asked, if this happens in this state, are you going to want to move? Yeah, I think I would, because this means more to me to support women than, those decisions should never have to be made. A woman should never have to choose that.
Exactly. I already have to choose what I want to do with my reproductive autonomy. Now I have to choose where I want to live. Now I have to choose if the state that I live in, if the men that run the state that I live in see my healthcare needs as legitimate. That's like a whole other thing. And it's not only just, like abortion that's at risk here. It's women's right. It's women's bodies, right? I mean, if we want to talk about like the things that people have been seeing, right? So in the United States right now, and I just want to make sure that I reference this properly, but in the United States, especially in Texas, the Texas murder statute applies to a fetus, applies to a bunch of cells, which like, I'll take a bunch of cells off my finger right now if you want. You know what I mean? Applies to a bunch of cells, the murder statute. A woman in Texas last week before or so, was charged with murder after applying or after using a self-induced abortion method in order to invoke an abortion of a fetus in her body. And that's what the problem here is, because it's not only just abortion, it's now what we are doing is we are creating criminals out of women.
And then what does that mean?
And then that means when we are criminals, we have zero economic power, and we lose the right to vote. And that's the whole point of this. And see, here's the thing with Republicans, conservatives, all of these white men who like to be in power. The men play the long game. They get it. These white men in power play the long game. They know how to wait for like their moment to strike. You know why? Because they've been doing it all of history. They have patience. So what these men are doing, what this is really doing, is trying to not only separate women, but disempower us from the inside out and infiltrating community of women, infiltrating the identity of womanness or other gender or genders, right? Because this doesn't just, abortion rights do not just apply to women. Abortion rights also apply to all gendered bodies. Whether you have a vagina, a vulva or not, right? Abortion rights apply to all of the genders, transgendered bodies, women's bodies, and men, because men benefit from abortion.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah. Like, let's not forget, and that's what actually makes me really sad about this, is that there has been a lot of opinion shared over the last 2.5 years, but I am very rarely seeing men step up right now and saying and talking about how they have benefited from abortion rights. And not because it's a right, but because it's true, but because these men are benefiting from abortions as well. You know?
Now, this isn't in like the best light, but I just noticed this because I'm watching Beverly Hills 90210, like rewatching the series right now.
Yeah.
This is what happens. Like, I got COVID a month ago. I was stuck in bed. Here we are. So now I can't turn it off. And just a few nights ago, the episode that I watched, she gets pregnant with the guy that she is having an affair with, and he's married. That guy benefited from abortion.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
100%.
Absolutely.
And also threatened her to get it. So there's also violence against women to have this procedure done. Sometimes they are not even given a choice, or there is violence.
Yes. So if you get an abortion, right, then you're not only criminalized, and then you're demonized, and then your church leaves you, your community leaves you, many of your family members leave you, your friends leave you, right? You suffer from a whole bunch of like mental health and mental wellness implications after that, because the therapy and the counseling that has to happen after an abortion is also extensive.
Oh, yeah.
But then if you don't get an abortion, then you may be subject to violence from men. It's like if you do get an abortion, you're going to be subject to violence from men. And if you don't get an abortion, you're going to be subject from violence from men. I'm sorry, what? Like what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Like what men need to step up into this conversation, and I'm calling all of them out right now.
And going back to Roe v. Wade, you know, I did a little bit of research because I wanted to hear about that case from the beginning. I didn't know anything about this person. So it's Norma McCorvey.
Yep.
And, you know, there's a story told. I was listening to like a documentary series that sort of took us through the steps of her various pregnancies. And she had many unwanted pregnancies, had given kids up for adoption. And she talked about the suffering that she experienced in giving her child up for adoption. How did she even discover abortion? Talking to her local bartender. And the bartender being like, I heard of a guy and this is what he's doing.
Like the problem is that even if you like look into it, or like the woman in Texas, for example, who was charged with murder, thankfully the charges were dropped, but like it was the hospital that reported her, right? I can't even imagine what the consequences would be of, you know, the actual freedom fighters that are happening right now, of people who are supporting women to get on flights and trains and car rides out of their states to access safe abortions, right? And just the criminality that is around that.
And then in another light, there's a financial part of all of this. And Roe is one of the women in history who, you know, we know that she was feeling uncomfortable financially with the thought of having another child at the point when she was researching the abortion. And it's also a socioeconomic conversation here, because we still know that even if this is overturned, that the privileged white women will still have access to what they need, and abortions will continue to happen, but not safely.
Not safely. Women of color are disproportionately affected by this, right? It's not people that look like you and I. People that look like you and I, right? We have privilege. We can, you know, it's figure it outable, but it is other women. It is women of color. It is other people that are disproportionately affected by this. Forced birth leads to economic poverty. Right? And I want to also create this language and set the tone for this language. There's no such thing as pro-life. Like pro-life is like, I love my life, let me live today. Pro-life isn't about the abortion debate. It's pro-forced birth, because that's what you're doing. You're forcing women to give birth. You're forcing my body to do something that I don't want to choose it to do. It's not pro-life.
Someone used the example in something I was listening to of like forcing a male to have like a blood transfusion that he didn't want to have.
Yep.
Like if you bring it back down to basics, it's a function of the human body that we have that men don't, that we are being forced to do something with in this case, if it were overturned. Yeah.
And you know what's something actually, Sarah, that just came to my mind also is a conversation that I've had with some of my patients over the years as well, is that not only does this like forced birth, like forced women's bodies things, you know, to do the things apply to abortion, but it also applies in a medical sense to like women requesting hysterectomies or wanting to, you know, handle all of that business down there, right? Because the number of patients and women that I know who have gone to their doctors and who have said, I want this out. Like please, like, give me a hysterectomy, partial, full, whatever. Like, this is causing me pain. My menstruation is too much. I don't want to have children, right? And the pushback that they get from mostly male medical doctors who say, well, but maybe one day, well, maybe, right? And then they gaslight us, they gaslight women into thinking you're not capable of making this decision. So we're going to make it for you. And you can suffer until we deem that it's appropriate that you get to decide what happens to your body, what happens to your vagina, what happens to your ovaries, what happens to all of that.
Is this why you're wearing your no shirt?
And this is why, this is why I'm wearing my no shirt. Because no.
No, period.
Like, that's it. That's it. God, as you know, I talk about boundaries. I'm big on boundaries, right? But that's what this conversation, right, opens it up to. This is not just a conversation about abortion. This is a conversation about how we continue to impoverish women. This is a conversation about my body autonomy and women's sexual rights. This is a conversation illuminating and highlighting how the medical drastically underfunds and undermines women's health and women's health experiences. Then this is also a conversation about the rights for me to choose my body, my birthing, my reproductive rights, and what I get to do with it, you know? Mm-hmm. And as a person who sees people who have had abortions, who are thinking about abortions, as a person who has counseled people who have gone through adoption and all of the multiple layers of trauma that adoption can bring onto people, which is also a very real experience. And as a person who has counseled mothers who have had who have given away their children, or people who have had abortions, like, I've literally seen it all. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the result is the same. None of this is easy. But when you take away a right to choose, then the entire conversation, anything else, any of the support, any of the moving forward, any of the health that could be brought to healing these decisions or this situation that we have to make for ourselves, dies.
Mm-hmm. There's two things you brought up I wanted to touch on. So yeah, I did take women's studies when I attended Western.
Yeah, purple
and I love. It was I think it was the first class that I ever like stepped into in university, and I left being like, oh my God, this is my new life, right? Like,
yeah.
I was totally like eyes open to a whole new world. And thank you to Kim Verweyen for that class. But one of the first things you touch on in women's studies is like the idea of as soon as you're talking about one part of a woman's body, it's objectifying the body, right?
Yes.
And in this case, that's a big part of the conversation too. So that was the first thing I wanted to say. And then the second thing is when you're talking about like the gaslighting, you kind of touched on persuasion. In the Roe v. Wade case, I think they called it dissuasion. But all these people trying to convince you otherwise when you know what's best for your body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right? Like I know what I want, and I'm allowed to choose it. Right? Men rarely, and I'm going to say this confidently, men rarely get pushed by how they want to choose to use, abuse, or love their bodies. Yep. Like, I'm trying to even think about a space or a place where men would ever feel uncomfortable to not choose something that has to do with their health, right? Like, other than maybe a pinky up the butt to check their prostate, like, there really is nothing, you know what I mean? There really is nothing. Whereas for women, we've had to struggle with fighting for not only abortion rights, but to eliminate the pink tax and to be able to choose, and then to choose our reproductive rights, and then birth control, and asking for actual critical research that supports birth control, or like tells us fully and clearly about what the effects of birth control are. Did you know that, like, it was like, I think it was about 2 years ago, between 2 to 5 years, in the past 2 to 5 years, they actually have come up with men's birth control. They've come up with multiple ways. But the side effects were too much. So because because the side effects were too much, they cut it down. They just stopped it right away. They were just like, nope, no men's birth control. It's okay. Women's bodies can handle this.
And I bet you that the side effects are comparable to the side effects of the birth control that we have access to today.
I don't even think that they were comparable. Like one of the options was like, they'll just literally, put in your seminal vesicle, right? They would just block it so that semen couldn't come through. And they would just put like a little bit of this material in there, not a material, but they would, put in a needle and squish it in there. And then, the semen just cycles back into your body, right? No side effects. Like the side effect is you can't get pregnant. You know what I mean? Like that's, that was the side effect. And like, even the fact that like the side effects of birth control are still drastically misunderstood. One of the things that I'm also seeing, on social media is how many women in these states where abortion is actually being challenged right now is a lot of women are getting IUDs, right? A lot of women are now turning to birth control while they still can, because that's what we're afraid of, right? They're afraid that they'll overturn Roe v. Wade and then they'll overturn reproductive justices and rights. So access to birth control and all that stuff will then also go. And then what are we left with?
Mm-hmm.
Then we're left.
That's what I was hearing in that podcast about the women working in the clinics, that they have so many patients coming in that think like, oh, I better do this now because I might not be able to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a very sad state of affairs. So I was really surprised to learn in that Roe v. Wade case that so Norma McCorvey, the Roe, she felt like she ended up becoming like a poster child for abortion, and she maybe wasn't ready for it. She just wanted to have an abortion. She didn't want to be the poster child.
Yeah.
And she ended up becoming good friends with a pastor who lived nearby. There was something about her developing a friendship. And this is where some dissuasion happened. And eventually she wanted to undo everything she stood up for. And that's a really interesting thing to me, to hear about a woman standing on both sides at two different points. And I just wonder, like, what your thoughts on that are, and if in Canada, you could see, like, it's almost like the pressure of the fight, that not everyone is up for that, and you can't put someone on that pedestal to do that if they are not comfortable, because again, that's a choice too.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Canada, a man fought for us for that.
Right.
Dr. Morgenthaler was a man. In the United States, they decided to victimize a woman in an already sensitive and critical judgment, decision. Mm-hmm. And they decided to do that. I completely understand why and how easily she was manipulated, but why she also maybe wanted to take a step back and overturn it and do all of those things, because the pressure of that is huge in a country like the United States, right? Even without social media.
I guess I'm just thinking about women who have platforms. You and I are two. We shared around the Amanda Gorman link.
Yes. I love that video.
Right? There's something so powerful about the way that she is using her platform. Did you want to go through some of the things that she was saying in that post? Yeah,
I would love to. So Amanda Gorman wrote this incredible why to stand up against abortion bans. And she came up with 4 or 5 different reasons. And the first reason was when the penalty for rape is less than the penalty for abortion after rape. It's not about caring for women, it's about controlling them. Mm-hmm. And that's what this is all about. And we need to talk about why that pisses me off in a second. But so that's the first point. Then she made a second point that said forcing women into motherhood and steadily sustaining the patriarchy chains women to poverty, which is what we've just talked about, right? Especially because it chains women to poverty disproportionately to women of color. Mm-hmm. Pregnancy is also a private and personal decision and does not require the permission of government officials. What? If I get pregnant with a partner, right? or if you got pregnant with your partner, for example, I don't have a partner, but like if you got pregnant with your partner, for example, right? You're not reporting that to the government. Like you're not asking the government to say, hey, is it okay if I have this baby? Right? There's no test you have to write, and sometimes there should be. But like there's nothing that you have to pass in order to make that decision. If two people decide to have a baby, or if one person decides to have a baby, then you can just do it. No one's going to question you. No one's going to pull it out. Right? However, abortion, to access an abortion and to terminate that pregnancy requires permission from government officials.
The only people who should be involved in that conversation are the people who might need to access an abortion.
Yes. That's it. That's
Simple.
it. Because for all time, and this is one of the other points that Amanda Gorman made, for all of time, women have and will always seek their own reproductive destiny. And any penalties subdue freedom to get access to safe healthcare. That's all it does. Women have sought their own reproductive destiny. And that's why what you're also seeing online is ways to induce a natural, safe, at-home abortion methods. That's why you're seeing all of those conversations and how and access to where and how to access the abortion pill, and then how to do it like at home safely with like herbs and stuff. And there's many women who tell that story. Who was I just reading yesterday? And they were telling the stories. They were 15 and they were pregnant, and the excruciating pain that they went through for a self-induced abortion because they were unable to access it.
And I hate to bring up a series right now, but there are some comparisons, right? And Handmaid's Tale, the characters at times have tried to not get pregnant because that was not what they wanted, right? But that community was forcing them through childbirth.
Yeah, forcing us to use our bodies.
And you know what? What's so crazy is like when I started watching that series, I remember feeling so like it took me to a dark place, right? That's a scary, heavy series, but it's so well done.
So well done.
And then now it's like, how close are we to this? Or maybe not in Canada, but there's places just south of the border that are very close to this. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, like a couple hours drive. Like guys, this isn't like on the moon. You know what I mean? Like this is like right over there. Like, you know what I mean? I can see it across the lake. Yeah. You know?
And another representation of this kind of stuff in a series, Yellowstone.
I haven't seen that.
Close your ears if you don't want to hear this.
That's okay. I'm not going to watch it. It's fine.
Okay. But there's a part in this series where there's, a flashback to Beth's childhood, and she's one of the main characters. And she got pregnant at a young age. She was terrified of daddy finding out. Her brother drives her to some place to have a procedure done, but it ends up being a lot more than an abortion, that she can never have children after that. And it still comes down to the same concept, which is someone else being in charge of your autonomy of your body.
I'm going to share something really quick. It's personal, but I think it's important to share. I've had an abortion. I had an abortion when I was younger. And I didn't tell anybody.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is? Reflecting on it all these years later.
Because I wasn't supported. Because I didn't feel that there was safety in that. I remember I told my two best friends, because you need somebody to pick you up from the hospital.
Yeah.
So I told them, I told my mom I was sleeping over at my best friend's house, probably going to hang out for the weekend and just have a great time. Mm-hmm. And I laid in her bed for like 2 days, and I had an abortion. And it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life. I think harder than choosing to go to university, one of the hardest decisions. And then since then, I've supported and taken many women to their abortions and done that work, and had these conversations. But this isn't a game, This isn't a glamorization of sex. This is serious. This is a healthcare issue and a healthcare concern. And healthcare includes mental health and physical health and emotional health and all of the healths. And when we limit this access for women or gendered bodies that hold vaginas, it limits our ability to get well after, right? I don't even think to this day anyone in my family knows that I've had an abortion. I think maybe I told my sister one time. Actually, I did. I told my sister one time, and she kind of held it against me for whatever reason. And then that's why she decided to not have an abortion when she had an unwanted pregnancy. And that's led her down some very interesting spaces as well.
You're taught to feel, or at least in my upbringing, my thoughts on abortion, which came from, where I was brought up and the schools I went to and the sex ed that was provided to me and all those things and your conversations with your parents. But shame and guilt are two words that pop right into my head, like easily accessible, right?
Right there, right? I had shame, I had guilt. I don't have those things now, but it's so much but I did, and I have. And it was really scary, and it was really wild, and it led me to not access the support that I needed afterwards. It led me to not have safety in my home and in my body for a really long time. It definitely took my mental health down a heck of a spiral for a hot minute there, right? And that's why, right? It's not about whether you want to have an abortion. It's it's almost like full circle, right? This is why I called out altar servers. It's not about whether I wanted to have it. It's that, can everybody else have the right to access it? I'm allowed to make my own choices for my body, and I want you to be able to allow to choose. But when we limit access, we are limiting choice. And that's the whole point of democracy. Isn't that the whole point of why we live in North America in the way that we do? It's not to have other people make my choices for me.
And what about all those women? This is a perspective that's not often covered. What about all those women who are deciding that an abortion is the best way for them to handle that situation because they want a different future for themselves. They want to go back to school. They want to spend money on this instead. They don't have the capacity because they're choosing this over this. That is still looking out for the future of humankind, is it not?
Right? Aren't we 50% of the population? Right?
Actually, what if that education leads to you having a family down the road where you ended up getting a master's degree first and then you decided to do it? Great.
Which is a very common story. There's many common stories of women who have had access to abortion, who have had abortions because they've had unwanted pregnancies, who go on academically to fulfill, like myself, I got my doctorate, you know what I mean? Many women go on to get their university degrees or college or whatever it is. And then they find a relationship that is healthy and safe. They are not stricken by motherhood poverty, right? And instead are able to then choose to have children when they are ready, when their priorities and aspirations are in alignment with having children, which is a decision and a choice that can change throughout the life cycle. And that's the whole point.
So what are your thoughts on what women can do now in Canada? What can we do right now?
Well, we can keep talking about it, right? We can keep talking about it. We can keep making our positions and our stance known, right? And vocalizing our support. Our voices really do have power. So the number one thing that we can do is continue to vocalize our support. The second thing that we can do is reach out to some of these abortion funds that are going on in the United States. Many different awesome places are doing that and raising money to help support women who are trying to access abortion safely. So we can also put our dollars where our mouth is, right? And what we can also do is support men to also enter the conversation. Because this isn't just a women's issue. This is a human rights, healthcare concern.
And there's so many men who are afraid to jump in on this.
Nuts. Afraid,
Like, come on.
afraid. Like, what is that? Like, afraid of what? What are you afraid of? Is what I wanted. Like, fear. It's not fear that you're feeling. That's not fear. That's shame. That's internalized shame. That's. There's nothing for you to be afraid of by entering the conversation. What, you're going to say something wrong because you benefited from an abortion? Get your shit together. Like. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is the position that you're choosing to not exert your power and control in? Really?
Yeah, after all the power you've exerted, come on in.
This is the position that you're going to choose to shy away from in terms of how the patriarchy influences both you and I? Really? This is it?
Cowardly.
It's not fear. Mm-hmm. It's not fear. I'm going to tell you that right now. God,
So
as I just called out all men. Sorry, I love you guys. I really do love men. But, like, show up for us. For crying out loud.
Show up. That's all you're asking. Show up.
You know what I mean? Like, show up for us. Like, it's ridiculous that only women are fighting this fight, or a majority is only women, or bodies with vaginas and vulvas. You know what I mean? Like, it's nuts. This is what a freedom convoy needs to be about, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I hear
just
that.
Have to throw that
I hear
out there.
that. What about someone threatening to not have an abortion? A woman threatening and using it as a weapon. That's a hard one, eh?
Yeah, that's a hard one.
A woman has held the threat of not having an abortion over a male in a, I guess that would be called a bribe in a way, almost.
Yeah, blackmail. Reproductive blackmail.
Using this right that we're fighting for as a weapon against someone. I don't even know what to say about it. But
you know what I'm going to say about it? Is that that's called trauma. Is that is what the trauma of women having to continuously fight for our reproductive rights. And not only for women having to fight for it, but to not having men included in this conversation. That is the effects of the trauma. That's what that is. That's all it is a reflection of trauma, because that woman already probably feels abandoned and isolated and lonely for whatever reason. And this is the way that she is trying to secure her sense of self and to secure her safety, which for many women is scripted in a relationship with a man. Because men have the power. Men make the most money. Men get to make a whole bunch of choices that we don't get to, right? Men get access that we don't get to. I don't agree with what she's doing. Let me be very clear about that. However, this is the result of the trauma of the bullshit of reproductive rights that has been going on in North America. It's not right. I don't think that is right, but it is an interesting conversation, because one of the things that comes up with that is, so why didn't you guys practice safer sex? Why didn't you have a conversation about safe sex, contraceptive barrier methods? Like, why wasn't that part of the conversation? When you have sex without a condom with a woman who does not have birth control, what do you think is going to happen? Like, it's not like pregnancy is a surprise. Like, we know how it happened. You know what I mean? So
you can literally look at a calendar.
Like, like, this isn't like, whoops, oh my God, she's pregnant. It's like, no, you had sex with her. What did you think was going to happen? Right? But that's why I'm saying that this is the result of a trauma, because men also feel, and I feel sorry for men who don't feel equipped or ready or able to have those safer sex conversations, and women where the onus is entirely on us. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. Like, I'm single, I'm dating, I'm doing the thing. Do you want to know how many men have talked to me about safe sex, using condoms, or done any of that? Zero. Zero. They're literally rolling the dice and gambling. And that's why true feminism includes the voices of men. Because men need to be part of these conversations. They don't get to choose what we get to choose. but they do get to have a voice and be part of the conversation. And because we've put all of the onus on women or vagina holders, right? Because we've put all of the onus on us, then you can't walk away and act like a victim when the consequence of your behavior was predictable.
And bringing this back to 90210 and Valerie Geller, you know, she used this threat of not having the abortion until, like, she was actually asking the guy for money. This happened, 90s TV, right? Come on.
Yeah.
But that right there, the blackmail of, if you don't give me the money, I'm not having the abortion. And she held that against him. That almost, to me, tells me that that woman is objectifying her own body.
Yeah, it's internalized trauma, right? Because women won't have an abortion because the money, it's not about the abortion, it's because they're poor and they don't have money and they don't have access. And because we don't get paid the same as men. And because we don't get access and right, like the economic disparity between genders is huge. And then when you go into outside of the binary gender of man and woman, when you go outside of, it's even larger, right? Like I hold space for that conversation because it's not just about women trying to get money from a guy. It's the result of decades, centuries of the suppression of women's identity and access to women's health and to reproductive rights, and the trauma that unfurls and has from that. That's a trauma response that you're seeing from that woman and from Val in 90210. It's not an actually like intentional manipulation. I mean, sometimes it's an intentional manipulation, but like, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily an intentional manipulation. It is a trauma response. At the end of the day, I just get to choose my reproductive rights.
Well, listen, when this leaked document came out, I thought of you right away in terms of like, how can I properly have a discussion about this on the podcast? It's heavy, first of all, but also like women who are in the media spotlight are not talking about this enough. We're starting to see more of it. So that's why I wanted to do this. And I appreciate you coming on. But you also have some news of your own. You're developing a show right now.
I am.
Okay. So you're going to have a show. And it's on Sundays. You got to tell us about Hi Carlen.
I'm so excited. It's so fun. It's so much fun. So it's called Hi Carlen, and it's a live call-in lifestyle show. So it's like, you know how earlier I mentioned I loved Sex with Sue? Yeah. Hi, welcome to me. That's what we're doing here. Okay. But it's called Hi Carlen, and you can call in with your questions and ask me your questions about sex, love, relationships, cannabis, mental wellness, lifestyle, all of those things. And I'm going to answer them for you on the air, just like Sex with Sue. It's a lot of fun. It's Sunday nights at 8. For now, it's on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Instagram. Like we literally are streaming it on every platform that we can, which is so much fun. But where someone like me can have conversations with people, men, women, all the genders, all the bodies, and we can talk about these things that matter. So thanks for that little plug. I appreciate it. It's called Hi Carlen. I love it. Because that's what my clients say to me, right? Whenever someone comes on the screen, they go, Hi Carlen. I'm like, hey, what's up? Let's get into it. You know? Yeah. It's fun.
I love that. So we'll put all the links in the episode notes if you do want to find out more about the show. But you also have you have a practice in case somebody is looking for.
Absolutely.
I sort of love like your approach to just like open conversations. So if you are looking for a psychotherapist, a sexologist, all that stuff, Carlen is there for you too. And you have your goddess program. You want to talk about your goddess program too?
Yeah. So working with me is easy. There's a few different ways. So you can join my private practice. We do nice one-on-one sessions, or you can sign up for one of my programs. So I have this really great therapy program called the Goddess Program, which is all about empowering women, empowering your confidence, elevating your relationship with you so that you can better show up for relationships with others. But I also have a couple other really cute, like little self-guided programs that you can join and hang out with. But yeah, on the Instagrams at carlen.costa, come hang out with me. Come see this sassy goddess of a psychotherapist. And let's talk about the things that matter.
And do you sell the shirt that you're wearing? Because I know you just launched a bunch of merch.
Sorry, yes. And then I also I totally forgot. So I'm wearing, this is one of my favorite shirts that we launched, which is the No shirt, right? No period is about my right to say no. It's about my commitment to setting my boundaries. And it's about understanding that within me, so that I can best communicate that to other people. And I often find like so many people are yes people. So many people are yes people, people pleasers, anxious attachment, that kind of thing. And I work primarily with women, but I do work with men who I absolutely love. But the people that I work with have a hard time saying no. So if you can't say it, at least you can wear it and then remind yourself how to set your boundaries for the day, and that no is okay. And no is also a complete sentence.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Like I said, feminist since age 12. She's an OG. I really enjoyed talking to you about all this stuff. I mean, it's not the most pleasant conversation to have, but we got to have it, and we got to have more of these conversations. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Like I said, in the episode notes, you can find out more about Carlen, the services that she offers, the type of patients she accepts. As well, we've got some resources there if you'd like to read up on any of the things that we were talking about. If you have yet to like, subscribe, or follow this podcast on your favorite podcast service, I would appreciate it. And throwing this out there, if there's a partner or brand that comes to mind that you think would be a great fit to feature in this podcast, please drop me a note at womeninmedia.ca, which is where you can find more information about me and more information about all my former guests. As always, thank you so much for listening.
A woman of ill repute is a person who's found success in non-traditional ways, often risking the disapproval of society. They're usually fearless, and more often than not, they're quite funny. They're certainly interesting, and sometimes inspirational. I'm Maureen Holloway, and along with my friend, noted broadcaster Wendy Besley, we talk to these women on our podcast, and we call it Women of Ill Repute. You might like it. Lots of people do. And all you have to do is listen on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or you could go to our website at womenofillrepute.com. That's kind of our online home. And while you're there, it wouldn't hurt you to sign up for our newsletter. I'm just saying.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.